Aloha and welcome back to this week's episode of Ola Ka Hāloa. Today, our theme is civic engagement. We'll be introducing you to some OHA platforms that have been created for civic engagement and also hear from some of our advocates in the community. And then, stay to the end because we have a special guest from Upcountry Piholo and you don't want to miss it. Alex Silvanus, our digital and print media manager, will share with us kamakako'i.com, our platform for civic engagement.
Kamakako'i.com is a cutting-edge tool to shape community. You may ask, how does a website shape community? Well, the answer lies in Kamakako'i's three-part approach to help community get informed, take action, and spread the word. On this issues-based website, you can get informed on a number of important topics affecting the Native Hawaiian community, including ea, aina, vai, iwi kupuna, and even melela hui. You can watch a video or read an article about any of these topics. The video stories are told from the perspectives of those entrenched in the issues, so you get to hear their first-person accounts of why the issues are so important and tap into the emotion of what is really at stake for our community. On kamakako'i.com, you can also take action by signing a petition or submitting legislative testimony. Or you can use the social sharing buttons on the site to spread the word with your social network. Our most recent Kamakako'i video production is Ho'ikawai, Return the Waters, that tells the story of the kalo farmers of East Maui who have fought for 30 years to return water to their streams to feed their lo'ikalo and their families. In anticipation of the recent Hawaii Supreme Court case, through Kamakako'i, we work to build awareness and support for the kalo farmers and cultural practitioners of the East Maui community who have stood vigilant in their pursuit for what they know is pono for their community and for all of Hawaii. Ola Naivi, The Bones Live, delves into the issue of the protection of iwi kupuna against desecration. We've also documented the return of iwi kupuna from Great Britain and most recently from London. Of particular interest to Ohana, who may be looking for good teaching materials now because of COVID-19, is the one-hour film Pa'akeo Puni, The Real History of Hawaii. This animated film provides an overview of the political history of Hawaii, from the rise of King Kamehameha the Great to the illegal overthrow of Queen Liliuokalani. Pa'akeo Puni shares the history of Hawaii that doesn't usually get taught in the history books, but knowing these facts are absolutely important as we move forward as a community. These films and more may be found online and are available for download. We invite you to visit kamakako'i.com to get informed, take action, and spread the word on the issues that are important to you as we work together to shape a community that is pono and grounded in aloha aina.
And now, to share with us more about the work to overcome the struggles in our communities is Executive Director of the Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation, Summer Sylva.
It's a really beautiful story. In 1974, grassroots community organizers, very much like the people we continue to serve today, envisioned a nonprofit that would provide voice and legal advocacy for underserved communities across our Pai'aina, the most underserved being Hawaiian, Native Hawaiian communities. And so for the last 46 years, we've been living out their dream, their legacy, and representing communities and individuals in the defense and protection of their land rights, their water rights, the rights of protecting iwi kupuna, the rights of practicing olelo Hawaii and other cultural practices, and we get to do that every day through the generosity of others, which I think is even more inspiring. I mean, we, as a nonprofit, most of our clients are indigent. They would not otherwise be able to afford legal services, and it's through the generosity of others that make our services possible. OHA is one such funder. We have funding from other private and public foundations, but the most giving that means the most to us is from our community folks who give $20, $50 a month or whenever they can And all that goes to ensuring that another 45 years going forward, we will constantly be the voice and the advocate standing alongside the Native Hawaiian community. I think the big takeaway is that the rule of law applies to all, particularly when our public trust resources are at stake. Some 34 years ago, one of the most powerful and influential companies in this state, Alexander and Baldwin, sought permission from the land board for the use of our public waters and our public lands for their commercial profit. For the last 34 years to the present, they've been the one company allowed to evade our state's environmental protection laws, while hundreds of other permit holders who asked for the same privilege dutifully comply. And so what was most impactful about this decision was that by the board to grant these permits was that it brought grievous harm to Hawaiian communities reliant on the resources that they were using for subsistence practices, for cultural practices. And so the wonderful thing about our laws in this state is that they're robust and they protect the rights of communities like those farmers in East Maui and their right to gather and practice culture. And so under the law, we were able to have that community stand shoulder to shoulder with a billion-dollar publicly traded company to seek from the courts, from our lawmakers, from the trustees of our lands, to hold people accountable to the laws that are supposed to malama this place and the communities that are dependent on these resources. And so we hope that that request is heeded because it's a fair and just one. It's the right thing to do, and it's long overdue.
To malama our iwi kupuna, care for our ancestral remains, has been a kuleana for this person for the majority of his adult life. He has volunteered fearlessly with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs so that we are able to bring back home all of our ancestors that are scattered across the honua. Welcome, Halealoha Ayau. E aloha halealoha, pehe oi.
Maikai, aloha.
And where are you coming from today?
No, I'm actually coming to you from the rainforest in Panaeva.
Oh, Maikai, eo Panaeva, and the compound over there that you are on right now. Aloha to the ohana over there. Halealoha, you have been in, this kuleana, in this movement, for the majority of your life, right? What can you tell us? What is the most important thing that you want to let the lahui know about this kuleana of malama iwi kupuna?
Well, let me start off by saying that, aloha no kako, my kumu who taught me these things are Edward and Pualani Kanahele from Hilo. And the lessons they taught us were then implemented over the past 30 years. So in terms of what's most important for our lahui to understand is that the act of caring for iwi kupuna goes to the very foundations of our identity as Hawaiian people. As expressed by the term oiwi, it literally means of the bone. So when our kupuna identify themselves in light of their ancestry, in light of those from whom they come from. So that indicates to you not just how they thought about themselves, but a responsibility to those who came before, a kuleana to those who came before. We called our homeland Kulaiwi, bone plain, that place where our ancestors are buried. And one of the most profound phrases to refer to family members is Ola Naivi. Literally, the bones live, but it refers to people who provide care to our elders as well as those who receive that care. So, the most important thing is to remember that iwi goes to the very essence of who we are as Hawaiians. When we first started, we had no idea to what extent the problem of removing iwi kupuna, disturbing iwi kupuna was. We were dealing initially with the Smithsonian Institute, and we just assumed that was the extent of the problem. And it turns out it was just really just scratching the surface. And then we started to understand and learn that they were basically spread out all over the world based upon the countries that were in Hawaii in the early days of contact. We're sending ships over and ship captains who were under contract to collect curios, they called them back then. And human skulls was at the top of the list. And so a lot of these ships and crews from these ships raided and ripped off a lot of burial caves, sand dunes that were openly exposed. I mean, we think the sand dune exposure problem is an issue now. It was an issue back then, 150 years ago. And so that made it clear that the kupuna were all over. And so we followed national laws to repatriate and bring back home those iwi kupuna and moipu that are in museums in the U.S. And then we also, not because of any international authority, but really based on Hawaiian cultural values and practices, we asserted them everywhere in the world. Scotland, England, Germany, France, New Zealand, Canada, Australia, Austria now, to let them know that it is not the absence of legal authority that prevents us from bringing home. It's a lack of understanding about humanity. And once you're able to explain that, we're not here as a matter of right, we're here as a matter of duty. We're here as a matter of responsibility. I cannot exist as a Hawaiian unless I know our people, our ancestral people who were mistreated this way are taken care of, are brought home, are respected, and are recommitted to the bosom of Papahānaumo.
Any last words you want to share with the Lahui?
Yeah, like a lot of the international repatriation work we've done, you and I have done, has been highlighted recently. But the most challenging cases for me are the ones at home.
Right. Because
for whatever reason, people seem to dig in more at home in terms of resisting. Right now, we've been trying for the last decade to rebury 700 plus iwi kupuna at Koiha'o Church. So this is a situation where we're not dealing with foreigners, we're not dealing with archaeologists or anthropologists who don't agree with our cultural views. We're not dealing with any of that. We're dealing with fellow Hawaiians who do not believe, or who believe that it's okay to, in mass, disturb iwi kupuna for our development. And what makes that tricky and complex, but beautiful at the same time, is that we all going to reach the same resolution that allows all of us to mutually heal our kaumaha together. And then to me, if we can do something like that, we can organize our lahui, we can get back on our feet, we can return to the high level of operation that our kupuna did. But we have to strengthen the ancestral foundation first. Otherwise, there's no strong foundation for us to stand on.
Mahalo nui, halealoha, for joining us and taking your time out today, all the way from Panaeva, Hawaii, and out to the Lahui. So mahalo nui.
Good job, Pablo.
Don't go anywhere. When we come back, of course, we have our special guest from Pi'i Holo, but right before that, we'll hear about Aloha Rising, Vote 2020.
Hey Tutu, try look this article in Kawai Ola.
Well, that? I saw that online already. Kawai Ola is online now at kawaiola.news with bonus features like video, photo albums, and 40 years of stories on our lahui.
Wow.
You never know. Get with the times, boy.
There will be luau again soon, and family gatherings. There will be hula festivals, sporting events, and concerts. To help our communities when they come back together, respond to the 2020 census now. Spend a few minutes online today to impact the next 10 years of healthcare, infrastructure, and education. Go to 2020census.gov and respond today to make Hawaii's tomorrow brighter. It's time to shape our future. Paid for by U.S. Census Bureau.
Heard you have a new process of voting this year. I don't vote, bro.
is so easy. All you gotta do is register by July 9th, get a ballot in the mail, fill them out, send them back. No lines, no post stations, just you and your kuleana.
The only kuleana I have is become the next big MMA fighter.
You think that's kuleana?
Whoa, it's our kuleana, our right and responsibility. Before you represent Hawaii in the cage, make sure you represent your people with your ballot.
They are the heroes, the helpers, working on the front lines. And here's one small way that you can help them in return. Complete your 2020 census today. 2020 census data helps our community plan funding for hospitals, clinics, and emergency services across Hawaii. An accurate count helps public health officials know who is at risk, and first responders identify the resources they need to protect our communities. Complete your census at 2020census.gov and help shape our future. Paid for by U.S. Census Bureau.
And joining us now, we have Community Outreach Manager Davis Price and Community Advocate Kumu Hina to talk more about Aloha Rising Vote 2020.
Aloha Rising, Connecting Kuleana is an online workshop series that we're hosting on our OHA Facebook Live via Zoom and in partnership with Kanai'okana and others. And the series is really centered on discussing mo'olelo, centered around civic engagement. And what we're hoping to do is help folks connect the dots between our cultural identity, our cultural values, and our role in kuleana to be civically engaged. And you know, in addition to the mo'olelo, we also offer up mele from kumu Hina.
Mahalo, Davis. Yes, the mele portion of Aloha Rising is to help inspire and uplift the na'au of our lahui. As we face the days ahead and we consider what is our potential to really impact our lives and our livelihood here in our homeland. So again, sharing Mele Aloha Aina is to help get us into a frame of mind and a place and space in our hearts so that we feel confident about extending ourselves beyond our comfort zone. In this case, for Aloha Rising, getting out the vote, registering to vote, and actually participating in a system that no matter where we are and how we feel about that system, it's really about considering how much we're impacted by that system. Our mele lahui have served to be a driving force when our people felt that there was no hope at the time of great political change amongst our people, at the time of the removal of our queen from a place of power against her will. Our people galvanized themselves around mele lahui. Kaulana na pua o Hawaii, ku pa'ama hope o ka aina. Hiki mai ka elele o ka loko ino, pala pala anunu me ka pakaha. And so, mele really sing to the spirit and the heart and the mind. And when our minds and our hearts are strong, the physical pain, the grief, trauma, we don't feel it as much.
You know, it's important that we take some time to really talk to each other and take civic engagement a step further. And it's not just about voting, but it's really about communicating with each other, sharing mo'olelo, so we understand why we have to be civically engaged. It's a different approach that I don't know that we've taken in the past, where we're just saying, oh, go vote. This is about understanding our kuleana to address, you know, a system or processes that are not working, right? And so I think that through these steps, when we, you know, as we share mele and mo'olelo with each other, we get an understanding of how civic engagement is really tied and part of our cultural identity and our values, that we will not only be more comfortable, but much more confident as we go and exercise our voice in various ways, one of them being to vote. You know, and it's really important this year that we take advantage of the all-male voting system, which is brand new. So we won't have our normal, what we're used to in terms of precinct polls where we go to our neighborhood library or school and engage that way. Everyone will be receiving a ballot in the mail, everyone who's registered. So it's important that we take the steps to register, check to make sure your address is updated, and then be on the lookout for your ballots in the mail. The ballots will drop around July 21st, and you'll have about 2 weeks to fill them out and submit them. And really, I think we should take that time to talk story with our ohana and our friends when we get our ballots, you know. I don't know what the status of social distancing will be at that time, but maybe having Zoom parties where we all jump in and online and talking story about our ballots and when who we're going to vote for and when we'll submit them.
And joining us now from upcountry Maui, up in Pi'iholo, in the beautiful rainforest up there, we have one of my dear friends and special guests here to talk about the resiliency of our culture during this time. E aloha mai Keali'i, peho oi.
Mai ka ino wau, mahalo, a oi?
Mai ka ino, I ko uiki aku ia oi. So pehea ko uka.
Mauno ka aina, mauno ka kanahele o keia aina nei, o pi'iholo nei keia. But yeah, regular, same old.
A few years ago, OHA, issued a grant, and you guys were, the lucky receivers of that grant, or won that grant opportunity for your guys' amazing project of creating a cultural center at Mauka there on Maui. How's it going? How's the project going?
You know, it's going as best as can in these challenging times. We are still in the permitting stage, but we're almost pau. We get one more thing to finish, and then we're going to be semi-shovel ready. We're going to do it in phases. So this year is one phase, we hope, which is all the floor part, all the cement, moving the aina a little bit and things, and then that'll be the first phase. And then 2 more phases to come up in the next 2 or 3 years. So we're hoping that that's how we can do it. In the meantime, as best as we can in these times, we still have our classes up there. We have our ipu discipline. We're going to be planting on Monday, practicing social distancing, but they have to know their ipu planting chant. It's on a good moon for that. So those kinds of things still occur for us. And mahalo to OHA for setting us on our path of that kind of learning. Ceremonial planting from every kind of plant that you can think of. So, mahalo.
So that's an amazing, and that's a great transition, because I want to ask you about that, the resiliency of our hula world during this time. How have you been able to kind of modify it and then still continue on with the different practices that you guys have?
Well, I think we're still, every week, we've been doing this for like 7 or 8 weeks already. And so we utilize several different kinds of platforms. So each of these platforms is pale in comparison to what we are so accustomed to. Hālau, the many breaths, it's about the collective, and it's about the Aloha Heialo collective, and getting all of that energy and feeding off of each other. And in this new medium, it's been difficult and it's been challenging. But it's better than nothing, because we have to ho'omau.
Right.
And if nothing else, us kanaka, we utilize everything that we can to make sure that our students remain on that path of learning, for our ike kupuna. And so if we have to do it via Zoom, if we have to do it via FB Live, whatever it takes, that's the end result. And sometimes it works, sometimes no work, and we get frustrated, and but we've become accustomed to it. Now the big question is, for me and for many Hālau, is how Hālau is going to look after all of this.
Right.
Yeah. How are we going to deal with the distancing if we're allowed to come together as a papa as a halau live. When they mele kahea in, you know, how are they going to stand? Do we use masks? You know, all of those things, we have to answer those questions, because right now we've been fulfilling everything as best as we can via social media and this kind of stuff. But you know, how are we going to move along over the next several months when everything opens up and it's, you know, we got to deal with that at some point. You know what? We're resilient. We make do with what have for the moment. I'm comforted, perhaps, knowing in the back burner of my old man brain is that this is not forever.
Right.
Yeah, this is not forever. Yeah, it's someday it's going to puka out and we can do what we normally did before. But it'll still change, it'll evolve as we move along. The great thing about Zoom and all of these kinds of things is that it's not good for the collective in a sense, but it affords us individual work with students.
True.
You know, otherwise, when we're in the halau, I don't usually have that, you know, unless I'm training them for a specific task individually. But now I can go individual, okay, look straight in the camera, chant your chant, you know, and I do the full kind of heli thing, yeah, like that.
Right.
And I'm able to connect individually more often through Zoom and through FB Live than I normally would in a halau situation. So that's positive.
That's a great silver lining, you know, to this, right? We've been able to, and it shows the resiliency of our practices that we can adapt and we can see the silver lining in a lot of this, right?
And another silver lining, I get to talk to you, because I never see you long time.
Right.
You know?
That's true. That's true. Many of us are now actually forcing ourselves, and not even forcing, but because of this isolation, are seeking out, you know, these conversations that we're usually too busy to have. Yeah, over time. So mahalo. Mahalo nui to you and all the work that you've done and how instrumental you have been into raising and elevating, you know, our lahui through your voice, through your hula, and through many of the activities that you've been a part of during your entire lifetime. Keali'i, I treasure you as a friend, and I mahalo you for being on here to share your mana or share your ike with the lahui today. So aloha to you and the ohana up there in Piholo from us here in Iwi Oahu.
Aloha.
Mahalo to all of our guests today, and mahalo to all of you. E ka la hui for joining us tonight. Hopefully, you've learned something a little bit more about how you can get civically engaged with the betterment, for the betterment of our communities. Join us on Thursdays at 2 p.m. on Facebook and also on Zoom for Aloha Rising Vote 2020. And we'll see you again next week, Saturday at 6 p.m. here on KGMB.